By Washington Congressman Adam Smith. He represents the state's 9th congressional district. He serves as the top Democrat on the House Armed Services Committee. Congressman, it's good to see you again. Ali got right to the point here that if Mike Johnson is saying we can't negotiate the ACA subsidies until we end the shutdown, that provides Democrats with exactly zero leverage to protect those subsidies from going up.
Look, what Mike Johnson said there is both dishonest and idiotic at the same time. We always negotiate during shutdowns. That's the whole point. I mean, it doesn't even make sense what he's saying. We have to agree to what the Republicans want before they will talk to us. Look, if you want to negotiate health care subsidies, if you want to negotiate tax policy, if you want to negotiate anything, you can do it right now. In past shutdowns, Congress has been in session voting. The Republicans this time have shut it down, sent us home, and said we're not going to talk to you. So what Mike Johnson is saying makes no sense whatsoever. We should be negotiating right now.
Yeah, I just want to be really clear on that. There's no prohibition to you members of Congress talking to each other at any point, under any circumstance. In fact, there's no law in the world and no situation in the world in which you are prevented from negotiating.
It just doesn't make any sense what Mike Johnson is saying. I have no idea why he's saying it. Every shutdown we've had, and I've been here for most of them, we've been negotiating from midnight on. That's been the whole point. So, but I think the big point here, yes, health care is important, but this is also an effort of Democrats to stop the autocratic takeover of this country. And I think Mike Johnson's attitude towards this and Donald Trump's attitude shows exactly why this is such an important point. They refuse to negotiate with us, and yet they expect us to vote with them. On issue after issue, Donald Trump has violated the law. On tariffs, on sending troops to our cities, we just saw another court ruling last night, I think, saying that he couldn't send troops to Portland because there is no emergency. Donald Trump has ran this government like Congress, democracy, Constitution, and the rule of law doesn't matter. Remember, one of the other big demands that we Democrats have is to change the law so we can more effectively block Trump's ability to ignore it on spending, on firing people. He has decided that the law doesn't apply to him. That's a crucial part of what we're asking for is changes to the law to rein him in so that he stops trashing the Constitution. And the way Mike Johnson is handling this negotiation points up the problem. He's like, no, we are going to run the government like an autocratic dictatorship, and everybody else in the country just has to eat it. And what Democrats are saying right now is no, we do not have to vote for your ridiculous way of running this government, and we're not going to.
I'm going to point out you're in Congress. Lots and lots of Democrats are in Washington, in Congress. Mike Johnson told everybody they can go home. The Senate leader, about a week and a half ago or 2 weeks ago, when Chuck Schumer and Hakeem Jeffries wrote a letter to Donald Trump to say, let's meet to try and avoid this, John Thune, the Senate Majority Leader, told Donald Trump, don't negotiate with them. So not only is there no prohibition, there have been active efforts on the part of Republicans to not negotiate a settlement to the shutdown.
Yeah, and look, again, I keep coming back to the same point. This is about so much more than one particular policy. Certainly what President Trump is doing to stop energy projects almost to the point where they're completed, which is going to drive up the cost of energy, all because of his whims against renewable clean energy, shutting down transportation projects. I mean, all of that is part of this autocratic way of running our government, and we really have a choice right now. Do we want to continue to be a constitutional republic, or do we want to turn all the power over to a king? All the power over to one president. He gets to make whatever decision he wants to make whenever he wants to make it. We want the public to pay attention to this issue and stand up to Donald Trump's autocratic way of running the government and forget about policy. Maybe you think that we shouldn't be funding health care to the degree that we should. Well, okay, let's have a debate, let's have a vote, and let's follow the law. But that's what Donald Trump is not doing, and why it is so important that we Democrats stand together and insist that that change.
Talk to me about that. I talked to Leader Jeffries yesterday, but then I talked to a lot of other people, Republicans and Democrats, who don't support Donald Trump, who said at this point they're threatening that if they're going to have these cuts, they're going to do the things they're going to do, whether the shutdown ends or they don't. In fact, the most salient point here is that these cuts have been happening since January 20th, since Doge, since Donald Trump came into power. So there's no particular advantage to giving in to Republicans at this point.
Absolutely not. I mean, and then the two things we can accomplish by standing up and fighting is, number one, we can get some changes in the law to restore some of those cuts, which we're certainly fighting for around health care, but also around food security, but also crucially to change the law to restrict the president's power so that he can stop being such an abusive autocrat in terms of the way he's approached the law. So the changes in policy are crucial, but the other thing is we want to get the American people's attention. Now, you and I, we follow politics every day. We watch all the shows and everything. Most people got a life. They got other things going on. This battle over the budget and reopening the government gives us an opportunity to really focus attention on all these issues. Look, I'll tell you something some people in Washington State have started telling me just the last couple of days. Why does a state like Washington pay federal taxes? I mean, if the President of the United States is going to say no money for blue states, when, by the way, we pay more in taxes than we get back, you're starting to hear people say, if this government is for the Republicans, by the Republicans, and only for the Republicans, why the hell are we paying taxes to these people? I mean, the division is getting great. We have to rein in Trump's power to basically protect our constitutional republic. And yes, also to make sure that millions of people don't get kicked off of their health care. But both of these issues are a crucial reason why this debate needs to be loud and heard by everybody who we can possibly reach.
Are you involved in, I understand, and I value the point that you're making, that this isn't about one policy, and if you want to discuss policy, there's a method to discuss that policy. But are you alarmed by the degree to which Speaker Jeffries said that when Schumer and Jeffries were in with Trump, they might have spent 15 seconds discussing this issue of healthcare subsidies to undocumented immigrants, which is illegal under existing law and not advocated for by most people. Yeah. This has become central to the argument that Democrats want the government to fund health insurance for undocumented immigrants.
Well, that would be the lie part of this. I mean, Mike Johnson keeps talking about that. The ACA clearly says illegal immigrants don't have access to these benefits. They keep lying about it because they can't tell the truth, all right? They can't talk about the truth of the impact of the cuts that they're doing, or they can't honestly defend the way Donald Trump is running this presidency. Even Republicans in Congress can't honestly defend this because they're part of Congress, and part of what Trump is doing is treating us as a body, Republican and Democrat alike, like we are irrelevant. Like this will be the end of our constitutional republic and our representative government. So they can't defend the truth. So of course they have to lie and make up stuff about undocumented immigrants.
Congressman, good to see you as always. Thank you for being with us. A treat to talk to you 2 times this weekend. Congressman Adam Smith of Washington. All right, coming up, remember when Trump fired the head of the Bureau of Labor Statistics back in August after a bad jobs report? Well, it's October, and Trump has not found